I've started doing some work on this Royal Enfield 250 Super 5, a machine very similar to another rare model called the Olympic, and they've got this leading link fork front end, and I've already had quite a lot of fun and games getting the front wheel off it actually, because it needs a front tyre, but I've got it off and got the tyre and tube off the wheel and got a tyre ordered. It should come tomorrow and I'll be putting that back on. The owner also said that the forks were a bit sloppy in the steering head and needed adjusting up, so I've been having a look at that, and I've had to get this sort of cowling, casquette, nacelle, whatever you want to call it, out the way for access to something that I'll show and discuss in a minute. This like castle nut adjusts the steering head bearings, and that you can get at that through the top of this casing, but it wouldn't turn for me because there's two hollow collets through the top yoke there which clamp together. This Allen bolt here passes through the one nearest us and screws into another one at the back, which is held captive. You can't get it out, but you can sort of undo the bolt a bit and then hit it with a drift and the collet will move back out the way to release. But to release this collet you've got to come around here, and this is why I've got this cowling off, and you've got to actually get a suitable drift through that tiny little half round hole there and through the centre of that collet. You pass your drift through like that and knock it, and that releases the first collet that we looked at, and that makes this free to turn to adjust the steering head. So I've done all that. I've adjusted the steering head and taken the play out of the steering head bearings so the forks don't slop around anymore, and now I've got to try and carefully put all this back together after I put this clamping bolt back in there, and of course tighten it up. But I thought I'd share this because it's very rare you see one of these machines with a leading link front fork on them. This setup is very similar to what you find on a lot of other Enfields, but the access to the other collet, if you like, that the bolt screws into is very awkward. So you slacken this bolt, knock it, that releases the one at the back, and then there's just enough of a hole through the one at the back to send the drift this way and drive this one out. It might have been better if they'd have put a thread inside that, so it could be, you could screw an oversized bolt in and extract it that way, but never mind, the job's done now. There's no play in the steering head, so I'm going to carefully put this lot back together and hopefully not do any damage as I do it. Here we are back with that Royal Enfield 250 Super 5, and I've hopefully got the front end knocked into shape now with the new tyre, tube and rim tape on the front wheel, cleaned a load of rust and crap out the front brake, and also dealt with loose steering head bearings as I've already discussed. Now I'm going over some of the rest of the bike before I get it ready to go for a test ride, and the next move is to sort out, check and deal with the valve clearances. Steady there. There's supposed to be no play in them, but there's quite a lot, so that's going to make a racket. And also this machine's owned by the same guy that owns the gold Continental 250 and the Continental GT 250 that I recently had here, that had issues with its fuel tank, either the fiberglass or a lining in it dissolving. I've had 3 250s from him here. They've all had the slim nut that's supposed to fit on top of this rocker assembly missing. I replaced the one in the 250 GT, and I've also found that the nut is missing from the gold Continental, and I've literally just taken the rocker cover off this one minutes ago and found that the same nut is missing from there, so I'll order up a couple of nuts as well. and I think I'll take the primary cover off and just check all is well, or reasonably well, in there, and have a look if we've got the scavenge oil strainer in there, and if so, check it and maybe clean it, check the primary chains and timing chains for adjustment, etc., and give it an oil change and a filter change before we go gallivanting around on it. So bit of work to do yet, although it's running. I cleaned all sorts of horrible mess and goo out of the petrol tank, unbelievable. I mean, if I could have got in there, I could have probably just about shoveled that out. So a few kettlefuls of boiling water with some washing up liquid and shaking it around, and even one mix where I put some stone chippings in there as well and swilled it all, sloshed the tank around, has got most of that horrible muddy silty residue out of there. So I've got fresh fuel in the tank as well, so by the time I've done all these little things, we should be ready to go for a hopefully trouble-free and possibly enjoyable ride on it. Right, well, here we are again with the Super 5, and I've sorted out the push rod adjustments, the valve clearances. They were very loose, they're sorted out. I thought I'd change the engine oil and filter and get the primary cover off and just check inside there, and I'm glad I did now, because I won't be going out on this later today, because I'm going to have to order a new seal for the end feed into the crankshaft. You can see the spring there. This is I haven't touched it, this is as the cover came off. There's the spring out of the seal there, just laying there. So we'll have to get that seal out and change that. Otherwise the oil feed into the crank and big end is going to be compromised. So I'll get a new one ordered and fit it. Probably have the part here tomorrow. In the meantime, I'll get the oil filter out, make sure that all the components related to that are in there and in the right order, because quite often there can be things missing and fitted incorrectly in there. And I'll also check the scavenge filter for the return oil, see if that needs a clean. So yeah, I'm pretty happy I took the primary cover off. It was worthwhile doing that, and could possibly have saved the engine. So there we go. I'll have to get a new seal, and I'll attend to the things that I can deal with at the moment and get a new seal ordered for that, put it all back together, and then try again at getting it ready to have a ride and see how it goes. I'm doing a full oil and filter change on this Royal Enfield 250 Super 5. I've already had the little scavenge filter out of there and cleaned that. There's a little bit of gunge in that, I've seen worse. So that's in there nice and clean. And I've got my new filter here. And very importantly, I've got the brass end cap on it there, which I've seen omitted before now, and I had to rebuild an engine as a result of that not being fitted, because the bottom of the filter can just drop right down to that oil outlet hole there from the filter chamber, which links up with the passageway in the primary cover, passes through a couple of seals, and then feeds the end of the crankshaft there. And if you don't have this little brass cup on the end of it, you get an end of the filter like that, which just drops right down, and the felt on the filter swells up, pushes out, blocks that hole, and then you've got no oil going to the big end. So vital to have that there fitted to that end of the filter. We've also got a spring, and that goes in first. Drop that in. Then we've got a steel washer that drops down on top of the spring. And finally, we've got a felt washer or seal that goes between that steel washer and the underside face of that brass cup on the filter to support that. So that goes in there. You'll see the filter, I push it down, it springs back up. Well, the cap on the top, when it's fastened down, actually sort of bears down on that and presses on it to hold it in place and make sure that there's no sort of free space between either end of the filter element where dirt could travel past. And I won't be doing it just now, because obviously I've got the primary cover off still, and the outlet from the oil filter chamber is there. But when it's all back on, I'll be pouring engine oil into there to fill that, to give everything a nice start when the engine starts up, because that's quite a large void space to fill if you had the engine running, waiting for that to fill before it could reach the big end. So I always fill that, give us a head start and less chance of doing any damage to the engine on start up that way. So that's where we are at this point. Well, here we have a Royal Enfield 250 Super 5, and rather ironically it's got 4 gears. It would have had 5 gears originally, but like a lot of 5-speed 250 Enfields, it's been retrofitted with 4-speed cluster because the 5-speed has had reliability issues with selection and rapid wear and so on. I have actually made a couple of videos in the past of me riding 250 GT Royal Enfields. I think there's a pair of them amongst all my videos that are 5-speeders that have brand new 5-speed clusters built into them, and they worked at the time, but I don't know how long they might have lasted. Anyway, it's time to go for a test ride on this, isn't it, Charlie? And I'd also like to point out, because the point has been raised in a comment on one of my other videos where someone presumed that I wouldn't be insured or taxed or legal on anything, or a lot of things that I ride perhaps. My insurance covers me for my own bikes and bikes that I work on. I paid a lot of money for that insurance, so don't worry, I'm not doing anything illegal, and this one is taxed if you want to check up on it. Anyway, enough of that nonsense. I'm going to get ready, put my jacket and helmet and boots and stuff on, and we'll take this one up Bantam Hill. I've already been up and down the lane on it. We may find issues on the downward gear changes, missing gears. I think it's over selecting a bit, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt and see what it does and how it goes. So I'll get ready and we'll give it a try. Right, what can you call a Royal Enfield 250 Super 5 that only has 4 gears? Well, perhaps an Olympic, more or less. I can also hear a train approaching, but by the time we started up and I got my helmet on, that will have gone through. So let's take this for a run, see how it goes. It certainly sounds promising. I'm going to stop. Well, we'll get a listen to the train then instead in a moment. And that, for those who nag me about blipping the throttle, is why I blip the throttle. Nothing coming from the left. quick adjustment, I think. Look at that. See you next time. I bet he heard me coming about 5 miles before I got here. That was really strange, that done, with his leading link 4. Okay. I hope we're picking that up. It's quite dramatic ahead of us today. Hopefully we got the train and the dog in that one. Hey, won't be a minute. Should we have a hot start? That's all okay. No leaks or horrible noises or smoke, but a few bungled gear changes shifting down where it seemed to over select a bit, so that might be something I could look at for the owner. I think I can see why they went back to telescopic forks. It sort of behaved itself better over a series of minor bumps, but hit some big ones, and boy, you know all about it. But quite a quirky, quaint little thing, and that was its first time out apart from a run up and down the lane, and I think I can probably make a few adjustments. Maybe have a look at the ignition timing. It pulls very well from low to mid range, but then seems to lose interest a bit, so it might want advancing up a bit. It's probably been rebuilt recently as well, I would think, by the sound of it and everything, although I found a couple of things wrong with it obviously that we've seen and discussed. But overall I think we got the basis of a sound little bike here. Yeah, very interesting.